No, you're good. You're the speaker, so you get to run the show, right? Good day, everyone, and welcome to the afternoon sessions. So we're obviously in the root cause stream, although it seems like the talks that are in this room are a bit all over the place, not necessarily related to root cause. But that's all good. So our next speaker, David Ross, is going to be speaking to us about from digital resistance to digital resilience, advancing safety in hazardous industries through innovation. Now, I hear that there are some AI talks that we are competing with at the moment, but I would say the AI hype is temporary, whereas safety is forever, right? So yeah, here we go. You can use that one. David's worked for Sphera to deliver award-winning operational risk management technology solutions to clients around the world for 13 years. Focusing now on efforts to help Sphera's growing Asia-Pacific client base in achieving their process safety digitalisation goals. Now, my understanding is David comes to us from Scotland via Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah, I live in Abu Dhabi.
Live in Abu Dhabi. So, an internationally recognised speaker, let's call it that. So, David, take it away.
Thank you very much. So I get called a Scotterati, Scottish Emirati. Yeah, my presentation, I've added in some AI at about 2 a.m. last night because I realised everyone wants to hear about AI, so I thought I'd give my view. But my presentation, I'll just quickly introduce Sphera, if you don't know who we are, outline what we've found to be some of the safety challenges facing hazardous industries, and look at some of every year we do a process safety survey across all our customer base and worldwide, different industries, and we've got some key findings. And then how, where our background is in technology, we can help enable and address some of those challenges. And then where everyone's looking now, what's the future of, process safety and AI? So I want to cover that. So who are Sphera? So Sphera is a leading provider of integrated operational risk and sustainability software. And we're not just a shiny software company. We also have a lot of people with expertise that have come from operations, maintenance, health and safety backgrounds, so we have a lot of data built into the software and services and consulting teams as well. We're not just a tech company, I guess. So our area of focus, so a lot of the companies you speak to here, and I know at this event as well, is around the kind of maintenance and asset management side. We come at it from an environmental health and safety into operations and maintenance, kind of is our approach. And so we've got solutions across all environmental health, safety, and sustainability, as well as product stewardship and kind of chemical management, supply chain solutions as well for risk to supply, and also my area of focus, which is around process safety management solutions. So jumping into, I thought I'd start with a quick kind of reference to what is process safety. I'm sure probably you know this, but the Centre of Chemical Process Safety kind of give the definition of a framework for managing the integrity of operating systems and processes handling hazardous substances to ensure you apply good design and basically don't blow up your plants and your mines and your factories. So this number of elements changes depending on the institute. WorkSafe have theirs, NOPSEMA have their standards, OSHA, CCPS, Energy Institute. But generally, they kind of form around these kind of key components, being able to do proper hazard identification and analysis, have standard operating procedures and practices, permit to work, managing the integrity and reliability of the plant, emergency response, MOC, incident, contractor management, and these are all themes you're seeing across the event, and I want to kind of talk about today. So the challenge is, though, when it gets into operations, everything changes, and I quite like the quote that since the day that you start operating, the last time you did a PHA or a HAZOP, is already out of date. As soon as you get into operations, you start, introducing preventative maintenance, critical break-in work, inhibiting safety critical equipment to do work in the site. Things fail, and you have to, management of change in place. So things are always changing, and I feel, we manage these processes in different places. Some on paper, some in point solutions, technology, and it means there's no real visibility across the kind of operation maintenance teams of what really the status is at any one time and what's the risk. So that's one of the challenges, and I was looking at the CCPS recent results that they'd put in terms of incidents and process safety incidents, and you can see in kind of how we manage process safety, some of the key factors that were found: hazard identification, risk assessment, so failures in that, in how we operate, competency of the workforce, safe work practices, asset integrity, reliability. So all of these themes, we talk about, still we see incidents in this space, even with lots of technology and lots of things nowadays. Sphera, every year since 2016, have produced an annual report. So we interview hundreds of our kind of senior leaders within our client base across mining, utility, energy companies, oil and gas, petrochem, all hazardous industries, rail, and we get some interesting feedback, and it hasn't, over the years, it hasn't changed a whole lot. What we find is that in process safety management, what we say we're going to do as an organization isn't then what we do in practice at a kind of top level. So a couple of key highlights: 1/3 of safety critical maintenance is not achieved as a kind of standard across what we heard, which is quite scary when you think about the hazardous facilities that we run, if a lot of the safety critical maintenance hasn't been done. And 66% of the respondents, so the majority, said that there's a gap between what their corporate process safety goals are and the actual reality in operations. So again, what we say we want to do is very different to what we do. And I thought of a kind of practical example of why this is the case. So if we think about it from a boardroom setting, standards, what this might look like, if 82% of the maintenance is complete, let's say, for your company, and that might seem, reasonable plan attainment. You might have a KPI set, and that might look okay. 79% of staff competent, trained, majority, and currently achieving 89% plan attainment, which they probably want higher, but that might seem, let's say, green at the boardroom level or acceptable. But when we go down a level, down to the supervisory level, you flip that, right? So that means 18% of maintenance is overdue, which sounds very different. 21% of the staff aren't, fully competent, trained, and 11% of the plans are not attained. So, there's more pressure to get stuff done. So, and then if we take that down, even more to the front line, and the guy actually at the site, he might not know he's out doing some hot work, spark potential, and he doesn't know that the gas detector hasn't actually had its maintenance, is overdue, or it's failed inspection. He might not be trained in the safety protocol during an emergency, and he's under pressure to perform tasks quicker. So very quickly, when you kind of drop down a few levels, you can see that this is why we then can potentially have incidents, and because it's not as green as it looks from kind of a top level. And there's lots of reasons for this, and part of that is trying to find a balance between making sure you're producing all the time is, I guess, the main one, but then operating safely, efficiently, and sustainably. And the challenge in doing that is today's environment. We've got aging assets. There's this whole skills gap with, lack of investment, and lots of experienced people leaving, new employees coming in, and trying to capture that knowledge. There's lots of mergers and acquisitions across all the industries happening, which brings its own challenges across data and systems. And increasing regulatory burden. So, things are running at full capacity. It's not easy by any means to manage this. Some of the key factors within our survey we found when it comes to what factors cause risk to increase in your plant. So I mentioned, loss of experienced personnel is a key one. Trying to capture that knowledge and retain it is a challenge. Conflicts between procedures and frontline kind of work, inaccurate standard operating procedures, and even cost pressures. So having the right equipment at the right time are all challenges from a safety perspective. And similarly on the efficiency side, so how do you achieve your asset integrity inspections, keep your maintenance up to date? And again, it's a lot of the challenges around limited resources and budget and conflicting priorities can all add to this challenge. And then the last point in this is around sustainability and being able to manage things. This is obviously has been a fairly hot topic around ESG, and a lot of people say that process safety remains an important part of that. And it can impact the company's performance from an environmental standpoint if you have a safety-related incident or you're not governing how you manage these processes. So what do leaders do, and how do we try to kind of move you towards a better situation? So one thing we often see is there's a resistance to digital, and companies remain more reactive. They don't have kind of real-time indicators or visibility of the status of the plants and the maintenance and the activities that are going on. So trying to move to more predictive and preventative with digital, so that you can get that visibility and have the right data. Things are often managed separately in different fragmented systems or on paper. There's lots of companies don't want to necessarily go to enterprise platforms. They stick to what they know and some of the tools they have, and that just causes some fragmentation and the need to integrate lots of systems. So trying to standardize an approach with software and help to streamline and make it more efficient, so that it's less costly to how you manage your operations. So integrated digital technology, and again, this is one of the questions we raised in the survey, and most agree that it's going to help enable with technology, like in the future, and it can help reduce your vulnerability to major hazard events by having the risk indicators and better visibility across the organization. So last kind of stats I wanted to share was around another study that was done by a leading IT analyst for Dantix, where they looked across all industries, thousands of different surveys across operators around industrial transformation and what's their next initiatives, and this was in 2025. And unsurprisingly, kind of production yield optimization was right up at the top, like most years. But then, interestingly, kind of rising up is safe operations and trying to make sure that they have asset optimization and managing things safely, and similarly also digital transformation across operations and maintenance activities. So those are key things that organizations are trying to improve on, and I'm seeing that a lot. That's why I'm here as well with some of our customer base in Australia and New Zealand and in the region, is most companies are now trying to digitize in this space. It seems to be growing, and especially when it comes to software and process safety management, some of the key areas, and I was just chatting to the gentleman from Rio Tinto, looking at digitizing process hazard analysis, for example, like all your HAZOP, LOPA, managing that within an enterprise platform, management of change, and permit to work, control of work, where lots of companies are still managing on paper, with contractors coming to site. You don't have full visibility on all the work site activities. There's still some other areas where there's no software and gaps, even around kind of mechanical integrity, risk management, and incident management, where there's no software or they're trying to plan to invest. So that's starting to grow as well. But this was some of the findings of this company. And then in terms of the priority for those initiatives, the main focus is around centralizing PSM-related data. So trying to manage that all within one centralized system, and implement standards at kind of both a global level and a plant level. So again, lots of focus around this with companies' kind of digital transformation plans. So how do we achieve it? So this is what Sphera do, and how we can help support right the way from, kind of call this the sort of 4 pillars of an integrated risk management steps. So first of all, identify and assess the risk. So managing, across your facilities, being able to understand what's the potential failures, what's the major hazards that we need to manage, and the consequence likelihood mitigations that we need to have in place, and understanding in real time the status of that. Moving into kind of, once understand, identify the hazards, once you move into operations, being able to actually then manage all those operations. So right the way from digital permit to work, lockout, tag out, managing shift handover, even looking at the safety critical equipment status, and understanding all of that. And then controlling and mitigating any changes. So, emergency response, management of change, pre-startup safety reviews, all of these things. And then lastly, more of a kind of predictive but looking backwards as well at kind of incidents and trends and auditing to make sure that you're continuously capturing lessons and improving and feeding that into the future status. So this is kind of the main pillars, and then to give you a kind of practical example, what we call kind of a connected plant. So one thing we've been doing is looking at, there are sources of data for most of these things. So, you have your data historians, your APM tools, so Hexagon downstairs, and companies that are managing, looking at the integrity operating windows of your critical equipment. And so we have the data, we know the data on this, but it's rarely linked to the major accident hazards and potential failures, and looking at it from a plant perspective and a scenario perspective as well. So it's more from a predictive maintenance focus, risk focus. And we also have management of change. So we have systems, tools that we manage that process. We manage the inhibits and deviations like on the plant, at the site, and all the inspection data that we store as well. So we know when things are overdue. We know when there's potential failures. And we manage all of that alongside all the permitted activity and operational activity going on. So all of these things are managed, and having an actual picture of this is something that companies struggle with. And this is something we've introduced, where we can give a real-time view by connecting all this source data and looking at this from a major accident hazard dashboard of fire, loss containment, for a particular unit, and even at a higher level, what is the risk to my equipment and scenarios, and what barriers do we have in place, whether they're we don't just want to know if they're outside of their operating window and failing. We want to know things that are effective as well, and really understand then what is the inherent risk, the residual risk, but more importantly, based on these failures, missing barriers, what's the actual risk to the site, and then roll that up across the unit and across the plant to really get visibility on what is the potential for an incident in this, a process safety related incident in this unit or area. And we can take that further, even looking at it from a bow tie perspective, and start to understand, like, I want to see real-time status of, overall status based on the operational status, the inspection, overdue maintenance, so I can start to understand what's the real potential for this kind of loss of containment within this reformer. And again, you can drill down and capture some of that underlying detail as well within the system. So that's just one example. Another thing we do is look around kind of digitizing the workforce and managing this. So how do we help the operations maintenance teams understand this reality, and first bringing in the schedule from SAP, Maximo, work orders, pulling them in, but looking at it from a risk perspective. So, what potential is there for hot work happening alongside braking containment? Where's the conflicts, and do we know the status of the safety critical equipment in the area? How do we standardize the practice as well? So just managing and digitizing this is an area that lots of companies are doing now to try digitize these processes to get more streamlined and efficient in how they do things like JSA, job safety analysis, and we have software to help standardize that and proactively then help manage risk with this as an input as well. All of this, of course, is mobile enabled, so big thing, being able to do all this at the site, offline capability to manage the work effectively, do gas testing, confirm isolation points, lockout, tag out. All of that can be managed within a system. I'm cautious because he's holding up 10 minutes. Structured handovers, and then support things like lessons learned and capturing, if something happened on that particular permit or that isolation, or that equipment or that location. Next time we do work here, I want to see a prompt and understand if a lesson was learned, and start. This is where we need to capture some of the experienced personnel moving off site. If we build a library of lessons for the new generation coming in, the software will start to inform them and keep that knowledge within the system. So that's now I'm jumping to my AI slides I added in at about 2 a.m. last night with jet lag. So I wanted to touch on AI because I know lots of people are saying, well, this is great, but where does AI fit in all this? And there's a number of use cases that we're looking at in our software space, and I talked about permit to work. Can we use it to pre-draft the job description, the standard operating like practice, and can we augment our risk assessments for the HazOps? Can we pull data from AI and tell us this? Even incident prevention, can we get predictive and help use trends? And even from a spares data and having the right equipment at the right place, can it tell me all of this? So these are the areas that we're looking at. And then when I looked at kind of the Verdantic studies around this, as well as this kind of global IT company looking at it, they said similar stuff. It's all around automated prioritization and decision making when it comes to automating routine tasks, getting more accurate maintenance task completion and work instructions, Gen AI co-pilots for critical information for operations. Like, these are all the things that they're talking about. But there's barriers, and I think this is important to highlight, and I feel everyone just wants AI to solve everything. So my focus is to say I don't think we're quite there, because at the foundation level, a lot of stuff's still on paper in a lot of companies, and pure quality data or incomplete data or lack of will generate lack of trust in what's actually coming out and helping you make decisions. So it was interesting seeing that, and I quite like this slide. Like, if you think about trying to use AI where there actually is insufficient data or human guidance for it, it might be inaccurate, inconsistent, it's not telling you the right information, and then that can actually lead to a lot of noise, and it could end up overwhelming operators and people who just don't know what the status really is and don't have the right information to make decisions. So I think we have to take steps towards this, and I really like this quote, which is, it's not about human versus machine, it's human with machine. Like, we can't replace the human intelligence side of it. We have to be looking at it from a conscious decision making, critical thinking, from a human operator who understands how the plants run. It's great that we get trend pattern recognition and it'll inform you with some of this predictive AI, but it needs to be a balance of the two. And last point on this before I kind of wrap up. I like the idea of augmented decision making. I think we can't go machines alone, autonomous decision making, and particularly around safety and reliability in the plants, because I wouldn't want it to tell me that I'm safe with a lack of data. But it can definitely support us in the decision-making process. But yeah, I think augmented decisions alongside AI, there's definitely use cases throughout what we're looking at, but I would just add that caution. The data has to be there and correct before we can go to that level of automation. So that was really my key part of, that was really my speech. Hope I'm on time. All good. Some of my key takeaways, just to kind of mention, I think the importance of resilience of using digital tools. There's still lots of challenges that we see in this space, and digital tools can certainly help. Enterprise platforms, technology is an enabler for the workforce to get the right types of work done at the right time, in the right place. And I do agree that AI is the future, but I think it needs to be utilized in the right way to augment human decision making. I think there's certainly use cases, but I would just add a word of caution after all the AI chat this week. And yeah, we've been doing this with lots of companies. Proven software, helping lots of companies in the hazardous industries across mining, rail, energy, oil and gas. Originally from Aberdeen, Scotland, so a lot of oil and gas customers out of there. And I think I'm doing a demonstration of some of the software in the Innovation Theatre at 4 o'clock. So if you want to see some of the software, I'll be doing that. I think it's only 15 minutes, but it's take you through some stuff around control of work. And that's it. That's my, hopefully on time. Any thoughts, questions? Happy to take. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
number of others using. They've got to take a photo, or they've got to, do this where it's so process critical.
Yeah.
They've actually got to follow a step process.
Yeah, so I was actually in Oman last week speaking to some of the big oil chemical companies there, and each of them said the same thing. They use a different digital permit system, and they said what we really need is the system to be able to ensure that when they're actually doing their job site inspection, they're actually at the right equipment in the right place, and they're not just saying they are, and and all that sort of stuff.
I had a guy come round just
Yeah.
to fit a Foxtel aerial on the roof,
Yeah.
and he was following this process step.
Yeah.
So he took a photo of the ladder, took a photo of his fall straight, took a photo of it fitting to the roof, took a
Wow.
photo of him climbing up there,
Yeah.
getting all tethered, the inspection of his harness, the whole shebang, right?
Yeah.
Helmet wearing, the whole bit. And I thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
get
yeah.
get shitty doing that.
You wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, that's a lot. No, there is tools. So there's you can have RFID tags on equipment. Make sure you're at the right place for the isolation points, for lockout tag out. You can one thing we can do, we can capture the equipment coordinates, and from the mobile when you're out at site doing your JSA or your job safety analysis or job site inspection, when you're entering it or doing the gas test or anything, it captures your GPS, and even from offline, it knows. Interestingly, it still knows your GPS when you sync. And the system will check on issuing a permit, were they within the distance of the equipment? And if not, it won't allow you to issue that permit. So and that was a big ask that these companies were looking for. How do we ensure people aren't cutting corners? Because they don't, a lot of the time they don't go out. They do their risk assessment. They say they're out at the site, and so there are lots of use cases to stop corner cutting, and even just things like prerequisite controls and prompts to make sure that they're following the sequence of, well, you identified you're working at height, you have to have a control for erect scaffolding or wearing a harness, and you have to confirm that you've done that. Maybe it doesn't go as far as taking a photo every single time, but you could do that as well and attach it. But yeah, so those are the types of rules we can build in to the software and make sure that there's checks along the approval process.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
become a desktop exercise, and you're still connecting
Yes.
with the people who are physically doing the work.
Yeah.
You can't proceed without.
Yeah. And it's going to make things more efficient, even just from badge scanning for permits and for checking someone's competency, that sort of thing. We've got all that sort of scenarios covered. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Do you believe in AI, or do you think I'm right in my warning? Yeah, exactly. You have to have the right data and the processes before you can just have AI do everything. I'll tell you what it was good at. I went to my first AFL game yesterday. I went to the Richmond Collingwood, and I typed in the taxi at 4 a.m. when I landed, like, ChatGPT, tell me, what did I write? Explain AFL rules to me as if I'm a child. And it gave me a really good breakdown, like as if I was a 6-year-old. It told me, I now know what a ruckman is, a mark, and I was like studying it. So there is good use for AI as well, but not for us. I don't think for safety and automating everything.
All right. Well,
Cool.
Thanks so much, David, for the discussion. I haven't been in operations and maintenance for probably about 10 years now, but that craps on all the tools that I used to have. So it's cool to see how it's developing. Now, as a reminder, at the end of all of these, we're being encouraged to remind you to fill out the feedback forms. Right, it helps inform, like the agenda for probably Perth as well as next year. So please make sure that you do that. Also, if you do have any burning questions, like between now and the next hour or so, I should have asked that thing. Dave will also be in the, what is it called? The Southern Ports Knowledge Centre.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, the Sphera stand is right opposite there, so I'm right next to there. So we have a stand if you want to see anything.
Go and ask questions. And David, thanks once again.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers, everyone. Thanks.